Welcome to the special podcast powered by the SAE-VIT chapter. I am Nidhi.
I'm Agrima.
And I am Aditya. Today's discussion revolves around a big question in the world of aviation. Is the Boeing 787 Dreamliner becoming outdated?
Launched as a symbol of futuristic aviation, the 787 promised to change the way we fly lighter, quieter, and more efficient. But in 2025, is that innovation still leading the industry?
In this episode, we'll break it down the original vision, the technology it brought, and how it compares to today's aircraft, and whether Boeing is keeping up with the times.
This podcast is brought to you by the SAE-VIT chapter, where we explore the crossroads of engineering, innovation, and the future of mobility.
If you are an aviation enthusiast, an engineering student, or just curious about what goes in the world's most advanced aircraft, this is the episode for you.
We're not just talking specs, we're diving into industry trends, market demands, and what aircrafts like the Dreamliner need to stay relevant.
So buckle in everyone, whether you are Team Boeing or just here for the turbulence, let's take off.
Segment 1: The origins of the Dreamliner. Let's start with some context. The Boeing 787 Dreamliner was unbuilt in 2004 and entered the commercial service in 2011. It was Boeing's response to a changing global aviation market.
Right, airlines were beginning to shift away from the hub and spoke model dominated by jumbo jets like 747. Instead, they wanted mid-size aircraft that could connect secondary cities directly with long-haul capability.
That shift in strategy is what gave rise to the Dreamliner. It promised point to point connectivity, fuel efficiency, and passenger comfort all in one.
A key innovation was Boeing's decision to use composite materials for over half of the aircraft structure, including the fuselage and wings. That was the first for a commercial jet of its size.
Composites allowed for reduced weight, which directly translated into better fuel economy and lower maintenance costs. It wasn't just about materials, it also changed how the aircraft was assembled.
Exactly. Boeing used a global supply chain model for the 787 program. Parts were manufactured in different countries, Japan, Italy, and the US, then brought together for final assembly. It was ambitious.
But that also led to delays. The first delivery was 3 years late, partly due to coordination challenges and issues with quality control.
Despite the setbacks, the demand was huge. Even before the first delivery, Boeing had already secured over 800 orders. That was a record at the time for a wide-body aircraft still under development.
Another big shift was its systems. The Dreamliner replaced traditional pneumatic systems with electric ones, from de-icing, cabin pressurization, even engine startup. This made the aircraft more electrically dependent but also more efficient.
Its engines, the Rolls-Royce Trent 1000 and GE's Gen X, were also built specifically for this platform, optimizing performance and reducing noise.
And it wasn't just about technical performance. Passenger experience was also reimagined. The 787 introduced larger windows with electronic dimming, higher cabin pressure, and better humidity, all reducing jet lag and fatigue.
This aircraft became a marketing asset for airlines. Airlines like Qatar Airways, ANA, and the British Airways used the 787's brand as a competitive edge, promoting it as a more comfortable and sustainable flight.
And let's not forget, this was also Boeing's attempt to reclaim the market leadership from Airbus, which had gained momentum with the A380 and A330.
Though the A380 was larger, the 787 offered a more efficient solution for modern routes, connecting city pairs that didn't need a 500-seat aircraft.
In a way, the Dreamliner shifted How the world thought about long distance air travel. It brought smaller cities onto the international map.
From 2011 onwards, we saw new non-stop routes open up, like Tokyo to Boston or Bangalore to San Francisco. Those were once impossible without refueling stops.
In just a few years, the 787 became a backbone for many airlines' international operations, especially for low cost long haul carriers and national flag carriers looking to modernize.
It wasn't perfect. The early years saw battery fire issues and groundings, but the fixes came quickly, and the confidence the aircraft bounced back.
So, the 787's origin story isn't just about innovation, it's about ambition, risk taking, and redefining what long haul travel could look like.
And two, performance today still relevant? Despite being an over decade old, the Dreamliner still performs impressively well in global fleets. It is used over by 70 airlines and continues to be one of Boeing's best-selling wide-body aircraft.
That's right, the 787-9 variant in particular has become a favorite. It offers a perfect mix of range and capacity, allowing airlines to fly long routes profitably without needing a huge passenger volume.
Its range is up to 14,010 kilometers, which means routes like Delhi to New York or Tokyo to Paris can be flown non-stop, even with challenging headwinds and full payload.
Another advantage is its fuel efficiency. The Dreamliner uses around 20 to 25% less fuel per passenger compared to older aircrafts like 767 or even 777-200ER.
And with fuel accounting for nearly 30% of an airline's operating cost, that's not just a bonus, it's a game changer for profitability.
What also stands out is its ability to access smaller airports. The lighter airframe and quieter engines means it can land at more noise-restricted or regional airports without causing disturbances.
I read that airports like Oslo, Auckland, and even secondary airports in Europe have seen a rise in long-haul routes thanks to the 787 flexible operating profile.
It's not just about economics and route planning. The flight deck systems, though not the most advanced today, are still reliable. Pilots transitioning from other Boeing aircraft find it relatively easy to adapt due to common cockpit layouts.
Boeing's decision to keep control systems closer to the 777 also helped in terms of pilot training and fleet integration. That saved time and cost for airlines.
Higher humidity, lower cabin altitude, and better pressurization genuinely reduce fatigue, especially on flights longer than 10 hours.
The cabin pressure is set to an equivalent of 6,000 feet instead of the usual 8,000 feet. It doesn't sound like much, but it makes a huge difference in how passengers feel when they land.
And then there are windows, the largest in any commercial aircraft. They let in more natural light and offer better views, improving the sense of space inside.
What's interesting is how airlines use those windows and LED mood lighting to create specific lighting scenes, sunrise, sunset, night sky, which help the circadian rhythms.
Even from a maintenance perspective, the 787 scores well. The composite fuselage resists corrosion and fatigue more than traditional aluminum structures, which means fewer checks and longer life cycles.
Data from airlines like United and ANA show that the Dreamliner's dispatch reliability is over 98%. That's a strong indicator of how dependable it is in day-to-day operations.
Also, let's not forget environmental impact. Lower fuel burn means lower carbon emission per seat, making the 787 a smart choice for airlines trying to meet global emission targets.
In fact, some carriers have included a Dreamliner in their sustainability reports to show how they are actively working toward the net zero goals.
So overall, the 787 remains highly relevant, not just because of what it was when it launched, but because it continues to deliver value operationally, technically, and financially. environmentally, and experientially.
Segment 3. The cracks begin to show. While the Dreamliner still performs well, we need to acknowledge that it's starting to show its age. Its design was finalized almost 2 decades ago, and its aviation has evolved significantly since then.
Right. While its systems are advanced at launch, newer aircraft are incorporating smarter avionics, advanced connectivity, and better system integration straight from the factory.
And when we talk about system integration, we're referring to everything from live engine health monitoring to predictive maintenance alerts, tools that newer jets are using to reduce downtime and increasing efficiency.
The Dreamliner does have some of those features, but they are not as deeply integrated or scalable. For many airlines focused on digital transformation, that's a limitation.
Another concern is manufacturing quality. Between 2019 and 2022, Boeing faced serious scrutiny over production flaws like gaps in the fuselage joints and improper shaping.
It led to a halt in deliveries for months. That affected not just Boeing's image, but also the fleet expansion plans of several major airlines.
Exactly. Airlines like Qatar Airways and American Airlines had to reshuffle routes, delay launches, or extend the life of older aircraft just because their 787s were delayed.
These delays also raised questions about Boeing's long term production strategy. Can they scale up with confidence, or are they still trying to stabilize internal processes?
Let's not forget cabin innovation. While the 787 introduced larger windows and better lighting early on, its competitors have now surpassed those features in terms of noise control, seat flexibility, and cabin airflow systems.
The A350, for example, has a quieter cabin overall. Passenger feedback often points to a smoother and more refined in flight experience, especially in economy or longer routes.
Also, the engines on the Dreamliner, while efficient, have had their share of reliability concerns. Rolls-Royce Trent 1000s had blade durability issues that led to grounding in multiple cases.
And those issues required engine swaps or longer inspections, again affecting airline schedules and trust in the platform.
There's also the sustainability angle. The 787 was the leader in its time, but it's not built with SAF compatibility or hydrogen propulsion in mind, at least not natively.
Airbus, by contrast, is already developing concepts for a hydrogen powered aircraft. So, while the 787 is fuel efficient, it isn't future fuel ready.
And considering the global push for net zero aviation by 2050, aircraft that can't adapt easily may face operational restrictions or become costlier to run.
Another overlooked factor is crew training and equipment specialization. Maintenance team often need special tools and knowledge to work on the Dreamliner's composite structure.
That adds operational complexity, especially for airlines operating in regions where MRO, maintenance, repair, and overhaul infrastructure is still catching up.
It also creates dependency on Boeing approved centers, which can raise costs and delay turnaround times for major servicing.
So, we are not saying that the Dreamliner has failed, but in a fast changing industry, Boeing still is falling behind. Boeing needs to make a strategic upgrades or risk the 787 becoming a legacy product. Segment 4. Head-to-head with competition. It's turned into a head-to-head dogfight between two wide-body wonders, the Airbus A350 and the Boeing 787 Dreamliner from the basics. Both these jets are made with over 50% composite material, which is a huge leap from older aluminium-heavy planes. It makes them lighter, more fuel-efficient, and better for long-haul routes. But their philosophy is totally different.
Exactly. Boeing went all in on the 787. It uses exactly. Boeing went all in on the 787. It uses one-piece composite barrels for its fuselage, which is structurally efficient but was a challenge to manufacture. Airbus played it smarter with modular composite panel-based construction and a focus on refinement over risk on the A350, which was safer but a bit more conventional.
And guess what? Boeing's big gamble caused trouble. Battery fires in 2013, planes grounded worldwide. Meanwhile, Airbus watched from the sidelines and perfected their entry. The A350 rolled out smoother, had fewer growing pains. Sure, Boeing recovered, but that shaky launch still haunts the Dreamliner's reputation.
Let's move inside the cabin. Passenger experience is a big factor. Both aircraft have larger windows, higher humidity, and lower cabin pressure, making long haul flights a lot more comfortable than older jets. You might think they both are great, and they are, but one of them definitely goes extra mile.
No question, the A350 wins on comfort. You get wider seats, 18 inches standard in economy, compared to the 17.3 inches on the 787. That may not sound like much, but over 15 hours, your hips will feel the difference.
Not to mention, the A350 is whisper quiet. Airbus uses those Rolls-Royce Trent XWB engines, which are super quiet and smooth. The sound insulation in A350 cabin is top-notch.
Still, the Dreamliner has its perks. Electronic dimmable windows instead of window shades. Very sci-fi. And it was the first airliner to introduce higher cabin humidity and lower altitude pressurization, which the A350 matched later.
And let's not forget the lighting. Both jets used LED mood lighting, but Airbus really went all in with customizable color zones to reduce jet lag.
Alright, let's bring the numbers. And some breaking headlines: range, fuel burns, and yes, controversies.
Here's something hot. Qatar Airways grounded over 20 A350s in 2021, citing paint degradation. It's even sparked a legal battle with Airbus. Meanwhile, Boeing facing delivery delays and quality control issues with the 787 due to fuelage gaps and shimming problems. Both giants have stumbled.
Meanwhile, Boeing's had a rough few years. 787 deliveries were halted multiple times. First, over fuselage gaps, then manufacturing quality lapses at Charleston. Some customers even switched to Airbus because of the delays.
Performance-wise, the A350-1000 flies farther, up to 16,100 kilometers, while the 787 tops out around 14,000 kilometers. But the 787 is slightly more efficient per seat mile, especially on medium-range long hauls.
And in terms of seating, the A350-1000 can carry 350 to 410 passengers, while the 787-10 usually maxes out around 318.
So, is the A350 is the marathoner and the 787's the flexible sprinter?
Exactly. The A350 is ideal for ultra-long routes like Singapore to JFK. The 787, perfect for thinner point-to-point routes like Boston to Tokyo.
Now, let's talk about who's really dominating the skies. Because in the high-stakes airline game, orders speak louder than engines.
Boeing's delivered over 1,100 Dreamliners since 2011. Airbus has shipped around 600 A350s since 2015. So the Dreamliner has the numbers. But the A350 has momentum. Just this year, airlines like Turkish Airlines and Emirates placed major A350 orders.
And airlines don't just choose sites, they choose missions. The 787s are perfect for routes under 12 hours, but for really long hauls with full cabins, that's A350 territory. Still, Emirates Singapore Airlines, Lufthansa, British Airways, they use both depending on the route. It's not an either or.
And new orders keep rolling in. In 2023, Emirates ordered 50 more A350s. Meanwhile, United and American Airlines are sticking with their 787 fleets and even expanding them. So really, there's no winner.
Hold on. Before we cruise into the skies, it's time to talk about turbulence. Behind the glossy ads and glowing reviews, both the A350 and 787 have faced major blows. Grounding orders, lawsuits, delays, and engineering nightmares that nearly grounded their futures.
Oh, absolutely. Boeing 787 Dreamliner has been living a bit of a nightmare at times. Let's rewind to 2013, barely 2 years after its debut. The entire global fleet was grounded. Why? Lithium-ion batteries. They were overheating and in some cases catching fire. That was a first in aviation history. An entire new aircraft model grounded worldwide for technical flaws.
Yeah, and it did not stop there. In 2020, just before COVID hit hard, Boeing paused 787 deliveries again due to manufacturing defects, this time involving fuelage gaps that didn't meet tolerance specs. We are talking about microscopic structural inconsistencies that could affect the plane's pressure integrity at higher altitude. That's serious stuff.
Absolutely. And get this, it kept happening. Boeing halted deliveries multiple times over the next 3 years. The FAA stepped in with stricter oversight, and airlines like American, United, and Qatar had to delay route expansions. Boeing's factory in Charleston, South Carolina, became a magnet for criticism. There were even whistleblower reports alleging quality control shortcuts and lack of engineering supervision.
It got so bad that some customers literally walked away. In 2021, Norwegian Air axed its entire long haul business and returned all its 787s, citing operational headaches and cost.
There are some maintenance team who say that the Dreamliner is a technological marvel, but over-engineered in some areas and under-inspected in others. It's like a Ferrari with faulty seatbelt. You love the performance, but you can't ignore the risk.
Uh, let's not forget Boeing's Arada Cloud, the MAX 737 crisis, which, while unrelated, damaged trust in Boeing overall. The scrutiny spilled over to the 787. Every bolt started being cautioned.
And Airbus, not exactly squeaky clean either, right?
No. In 2021, Qatar Airways grounded over 20 A350s, citing paint degradation and surface cracking beneath the fuselage. Qatar called it a serious airworthiness issue, while Airbus said it was cosmetic. The legal fight got nasty. $2 billion lawsuit nasty. Airbus even cancelled Qatar's A321neo order in retaliation.
From what I know, the issue didn't affect safety, but it raised real questions about material fatigue and quality consistency. Airbus later made production tweaks, and some regulators said it wasn't a flight risk. Still, it hit the A350's image.
So, on one hand, Boeing's been battling engineering flaws and delivery delays, and on the other, Airbus had a PR and legal war over quality and customer trust.
Exactly. It's a reminder that even the most advanced aircraft are the result of tens of thousands of parts, people, and processes. When one thing slips, the whole jet feels the shake.
And that's why airlines don't just buy jets. They buy support systems, reliability, and manufacturer accountability. In today's market, safety records, delivery schedules, and after-sales service matter just as much as engine thrust and range.
Segment 5. What's next for the 787? The big question is, What does the next chapter look like for the 787? When we talk about the 787 today, we're not just talking about a jet, we're talking about a turning point for Boeing. The 787 is responsive, efficient, and frankly ahead of its time in some cockpit features. But admiration doesn't erase the challenges. Boeing can't afford to coast anymore.
Exactly. The aircraft itself is still sound. It's the ecosystem around it that's been shaky. If Boeing wants the Dreamliner to stay relevant in the 2030s and beyond, it has to stop firefighting and start future proofing. We're talking about sustainability, engineering discipline, and rebuilding trust. This isn't just about parts and wings, it's about Boeing's credibility in a hyper competitive, hyper regulated industry.
Right. And to put it bluntly, Boeing's biggest obstacle right now isn't Airbus, it's itself. The 787 has strong fundamentals, but a company has to restore faith across the board with airline, with regulators, with pilots, and with the flying public. Because let's be clear, the Dreamliner isn't dying, but it's standing at a crossroads, and whether it ascends or stalls depends on the choices made now.
Boeing must start with quality control. It must be bulletproof going forward. The fuselage issues, the trimming inconsistencies, the tools being left inside aircraft, all that needs to stop yesterday. Pilots may not build the aircraft, but they fly them. And trust in the machine begins with trust in the factory. Boeing's Charleston plant must evolve from a cautionary tale into a case study in recovery.
And that's not just the internal pressure, it's regulatory too. The FAA now requires Boeing to get approval for each 787 delivery individually. That's unheard for a program this old. It adds cost, it slows everything down, and it tells the industry one thing: Boeing's homework is being double checked because they've messed up too many times before.
Yeah, definitely. Do you know what's wild? In 2011, the Dreamliner symbolized the future. Today, it symbolizes the gap between innovation and execution. Boeing doesn't need to reinvent the wheel here. They need to prove they can build that wheel consistently and safely, batch after batch. That's step one.
Next up is sustainability. This matters not just to the regulators, but to next gen travelers. Passengers are increasingly climate conscious. Governments are tightening emission rules. Airlines are under pressure to decarbonize, and aircrafts like the 787 will need to adapt because no one wants to fly a legacy jet by 2035.
Exactly. The good news is the Dreamliner already checks some boxes. It's about 20 to 25% more fuel efficient than the planes it replaced. But Boeing can't stop there. There's a growing pressure for sustainable aviation fuel compatibility, engine upgrades, and even talk. Though still speculative about future retrofits for hybrid electric or hydrogen assistance systems.
And it's not sci fi. Companies like Rolls Royce are already testing hydrogen combustion engines. Boeing doesn't need to redesign the 787, but they do need to ensure it's modular enough to adapt when that next leap comes. Think of it like the iPhone. Solid hardware, but the software updates better keep coming.
Let's talk survival. The 787 isn't competing with Airbus anymore. The A350 is winning long haul prestige routes: Singapore to New York, Doha to Auckland, you name it. But down the road, China's COMAC C929 is gunning for a slice of the wide body pie. So Boeing can't just defend its turf, it has to expand it.
And let's not forget passenger preference. People notice differences now. The seat width, cabin pressure, noise levels. The A350 has the edge in some of those metrics. Boeing needs to up its game in the cabin experience too. Maybe it's time for Dreamliner interior refresh. Something beyond just airline customizations.
And then there's the elephant in the room, fleet replacement cycles. Over the next decade, thousands of wide-body aircraft will be retired. If Boeing wants to capture those deals, the 787 must remain not just relevant, but undeniably reliable. That means no more delays, no more legal dramas, and no more PR disasters. Airlines will go with what they can trust long term. Right now, Boeing has to earn that trust all over again.
Let's imagine two futures. In the first, Boeing cleans house, tightens production, enhances sustainability, and reclaims its title as a long haul pioneer. The 787 stays in production into the late 2030s and becomes a core part of the next gen fleets.
In the second scenario, Boeing keeps stumbling. Airline shifts more orders to Airbus. The A350 takes over more routes. The 787 becomes that plane still flying, but with a decent legacy. Remember as the jet that could have done more.
And which way it goes depends on how fast Boeing moves from reaction to reinvention. They can't just fix problems, they have to set their next standard. Because by the 787 started as a bold innovation, its next chapter has to be about discipline, dependability, and daring in the right places.
Conclusion. So, is the Boeing 787 Dreamliner outdated? No, not quite, but it's definitely aging. It's still efficient, still dependable, but no longer owns the spotlight it once did. The skies are getting crowded, and the Dreamliner can't just coast on its legacy.
It was a game changer when it launched, and in many ways, it still holds its ground. But with the new competitors rising and aviation priorities shifting towards sustainability, comfort, and flawless execution, Boeing has to make bold, smart moves to keep the Dreamliner flying high, risk falling behind.
Thanks for flying with us on this episode, brought to you by the SAE-VIT chapter. If you enjoyed this ride through Aerospace Insight, or if there's a topic you're dying to hear more about, hit us up on our official socials. We are always listening.
We hope this episode gave you more than just a look at one aircraft, because the real story is how aviation reinvents itself again and again. One design, one challenge, and one leap at a time.